Hey there! Howdy, howdy, how's everybody doing? Rusty Nelson here, the old Rusty Professor, your favorite four-finger watercolor fanatic, here to give you demos and tutorials on learning how to watercolor. So welcome new viewers. If you're new to this podcast, this vlog, welcome, and that's exactly what I do on this channel is I'm preparing and developing tutorials for anybody to learn how to watercolor. And it's kind of my goal and my mission for this channel is to bring those skills and lessons that I've learned over a course of a professional career, working in advertising, working as an illustrator, also teaching in higher education for the last, 27 years now. So I have a lot of experience and I'm approaching retirement. If like a lot of our regular viewers haven't already heard this time and time again, I'm approaching retirement, and I think this is such a fun activity and thing to do. It occupies your time, keeps your mind active, and I've been watching my stats on YouTube, and I do have a predominantly 65 plus audience. Yay, I'm hitting my target demographics. But I've been watching my stats on the younger end of the audience, even some from the 18 to 24 year old. I'm starting to get a little bump up and a glitch into that statistic, and also the 24 into 45 age range has really been popping off in the last few videos. I am attributing a lot of that to maybe the little shorts that I've been doing, but anyway, that is exactly what I'm wanting to accomplish, and what I am doing and have been doing for the last 7 months is essentially doing the tutorials and the demonstrations that I typically give my college level intro to the watercolor course. And so, of course, I do get a lot of non-majors, the business majors, the science majors, those STEM people that are all very analytical and linear thinking and things like that. So they do enjoy the course. They do progress really quickly, and I do have to work through the course fairly quickly. We only have 15 weeks to get people up off the ground and creating and working with watercolor, as opposed to what my channel, I've taken a little more time to develop some more of the tutorials and the skill sets that you need to do that I expect the students to kind of do on their own when they are taking my course. So I've been expanding and building a library of tutorials. So if you are new to this vlog, this channel, go back through and you can get started from the ground level. Some of my very first tutorials were all about learning the fundamentals, even going clear back to making a mark, learning how to draw 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspective, and then moving into some of the fundamentals of the states and stages of watercolor that you're going to be learning and working with as you are growing these skills. And the joy of YouTube is amazing. I wish I'd had access to something like this when I was getting started, when I was in my 18 to 24 age period, when I was in college and taking courses from instructors and, painting courses and things like that. And of course, at that time, everything that was being taught, and I think it depends on the school and the timeline and the time span when I took it. Everything was oil painting, predominantly oil painting, with some acrylic mixed in. I took no watercolor courses. This is story time with Rusty. I took no watercolor courses while I was in college, and I was developing I was interested in illustration predominantly. So I did switch from being an art major into a design major. I wanted to be an illustrator, wound up being an art director, designer, and all that stuff, which illustrated on the side as well. And all the illustrators and artists that I liked their work and the techniques and the visuals that they created, I was trying to do that. I was trying to replicate that, figure out techniques through reading magazine articles and books and any information I could glean from any type of a source. And, even some of those old VHS tutorial videos, right? You could pop a few of those in, or even just watching, Bob Ross on PBS that I watched a few times, which I didn't realize at the time. But when I was learning to do all of this the hard way without YouTube tutorials, was that I did like actually watching and kind of hanging out over the shoulder of somebody who knew what they were doing. And I recognized that once I started working professionally as a designer, and I was exposed to other artists and seeing their work stages and their processes. So I did realize that was a thing that I enjoyed working with and having discussions with other artists as to what struggles and difficulties they were having. So, but back in the dark ages, it was murder, and it is such a nice thing to have YouTube available now that I'm able to maybe inject and put my knowledge base, my skill sets out there for others to learn and to watch and to grow their skills. So that's the goal of my channel, and hopefully will get you up and off the ground. If you're watching this for whatever reason and you haven't started, man, this is great. Go back to some of my very initial videos and you're going to get up and off the ground and working with watercolor, and should progress relatively quickly. I think I'm done and have completed all of my really fundamental basic demos and tutorials that I typically give my intro course. And it's at about this point in the course of my semester, maybe halfway, just past halfway, 3/4 of the way in, I start turning it over to the students to start making creative decisions as to what they want to paint, and then them trying to figure out how to apply all of those knowledge bases that they've been developing with these beginner tutorials. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with the channel. We're moving into more intermediate pieces and scenes, combining a whole range of various techniques, working with textures and shapes and color gradients and overlaps, translucencies, dry brush, glazing. So, boy, that sounds kind of daunting, doesn't it? But if you come after it one step at a time, it all makes sense, and you'll realize when and what you need to do with the piece, and even learning how to dissect your image that you're working with, whether it's a printout, something on screen you're looking at, or even plein air. If you're out there in an environment, being able to compose a composition and get all of the components in the right spots to create a dynamic and an interesting scene for people to look at. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And again, depending upon where you're at, you're here for a reason. I want you to know that this is very doable. This is a learned skill set. It doesn't require talent. You can develop your talent. I always tell my students, talent's nothing more than time on task. You're developing a knowledge base that you can then start applying to the various problems that you are wanting to solve as an artist, as a visual person. So yeah, get in there and start practicing. That's, I chant that all the time with my students, to get in there and just do it. And don't be afraid of failing. You have to fail to learn this. And you're going to be very frustrated, but just pick up that brush and do it again. And don't change too many parameters from one screw up to the next. Keep the same thing going, and maybe tweak whatever you finally determine is the wrong thing. The thing that you did incorrectly that led to a disaster. That's all you have to do. Just keep after it and make better decisions. Improve 1% each time you do a watercolor, and you're going to be creating some amazing pieces. You're going to be giving it out to friends and family. You'll be pinning them to your refrigerator wall, or taking it down to Hobby Lobby to have them framed and matted and giving them out as presents. You'll probably have people coming to you for pet portraits before you know it. So dive in and get started on it. That was the longest intro I think I've ever done. Hey, here's some things, I just wanted to reiterate. I've only got a few minutes. Some of the basic fundamental things that students tend to get incorrect when they're first getting started with watercolor is, one, they don't use enough water when they're starting to lay down those initial washes. Stage 1, which is a wet on wet with color, they tend to not use enough water. You have to use a lot of water until the surface of the paper is shiny and even creates that little bead at the, if you're, with watercolor, you should be working with your artwork at an angle to some degree, and that creates a gravity fall within the puddle of water you're putting on the paper. So you should have a little bead of water at the bottom of your paper. So one of the biggest mistakes they make, they just never use enough water. And then the next step, and the biggest problem, especially in the wet on wet, that stage 1 stage, is that they don't use enough pigment. They squirt out a little dinky dab of color onto their palette, and they're, I think it's because it costs money, right? The pigment costs money, especially good pigment. So they don't want to waste any. So, but you've got to squirt out a pretty good blob of paint onto your palette and mix it in and get it saturated. And again, those various states of watercolor, of tea, coffee, milk, cream, butter. Those are essentially the consistency and the saturations that you're going to be working with when you are applying the paint to the paper. So not enough water, not enough pigment. Now, the cool thing about watercolor is it doesn't take a lot of supplies or tools. You can get by with a pretty basic set of colors, 3 to 4, 5 colors, white, black, the white and the shade, the tint and the shade, and some start out with cheaper paper. Don't worry about expensive stuff till you get a handle on some of your basic skills. And again, I'm here to tell you this can be done. It can be learned. If you've never been creative, visual in your life, get started now. What do you got to lose? It's a good way to relax. It's a way to think differently than you might have to work with your job. It gives you something to do. You're kind of staying active, keeping your mind involved, and maybe creating those new neuro synapses in there. So you're staving off your old age in a multitude of ways, getting you outside and walking and exercise. So this is the thing to do, and I'm going to be preaching that from this vlog and podcast for as long as I can. And have fun with it. There's nothing that can go wrong with this as long as you have the right attitude. So even when the outcome of your piece is wrong, so what? You made progress. You have made a dent on that knowledge base that you need to do, so that pretty soon you're going to be whipping out freaking amazing artwork in a matter of minutes, within an hour, within 2 hours, no matter what the size, whether you're working that nice little modest sketch, exercise, study size, or you're moving up to the bigger platforms, the larger pieces of paper, whether you're working on pads or blocks, or you buy your paper in rolls and just rip it to whatever size you want. It won't matter. That's just the mechanics of it. You have built that knowledge base in your mind with your hand. You've developed that hand. You have that sensitivity through all that hard work and practice, that 1% improvement every time. So you might as well get started now. Come in, join in, jump into the pool, and we're going to have a lot of fun in the next few weeks. I'm getting ready for the next semester. The summer has flown by. I don't know where it's gone. I've been busy with teaching this summer. I've also had a vacation we just got returned from. I've been busy trying to bank and store a range of videos to drop while I was busy. So I'm back to it. I'm back into my fall semester routine, and I'm looking forward to the videos that I'm going to be giving you this coming semester. So stay tuned. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button, drop me some comments. Those are really fun because I can address a lot of the issues right here in this vlog and podcast. So I hope to see you in the tutorials with the vlogs, making some comments on everything, the vlogs, the tutorials, or even my community tab. And I'll see you next week with vlog 17.